95% of people will never be able to retire. Not because they don't work hard or because they don't save. It's because they got no plan. They're just winging it, letting their boss put away some money in a retirement annuity every month, knowing that that money is never going to be enough to retire. Be honest. If I asked you right now how much you actually need to retire, could you give me a number? The answer is probably not. And if you do know the number, do you actually have a real plan to get you there given your current income? Probably not. I need to make sure that you retire. And I actually have a plan to get you there with Bitcoin. It's the simplest way to retire rich. And the good news is that it's super easy to implement. It's a tiny amount that you have to invest every single week. In fact, when you hear the amount that you have to invest weekly, you're going to be shocked by how small it is. So today, we're going to build the ultimate Bitcoin retirement plan. We're going to calculate when you need to retire, how much you'll need to retire with, how much Bitcoin is going to be on the day you retire. And I'm going to show you exactly how to get there by putting aside a tiny amount every single week. I'm CryptoManRan, and I love making videos like this. I've been in crypto for over 11 years, and I'm on a mission to build the most profitable community in the world by sharing frameworks just like this one. If you want to join me on this mission, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, hit that notification bell. Because on this channel, you never know when the alpha is going to drop. When it does, that could be the one show that changes your entire portfolio. If you want more live and up-to-the-minute news broadcasts, that you can get on Banter every single day. On this channel, I drop more informative framework type content, stuff that you can use to expedite your retirement. So why are we talking about retirement? Well, a few weeks ago, Trump signed a monumental executive order, which effectively opened up the US 401k and retirement accounts to be able to invest in Bitcoin.
The president has also signed an executive order allowing alternative assets into 401ks, including cryptocurrency.
Effectively, this opens up a $9 trillion market to be able to invest in crypto for the first time. Even better, anyone that already has a 401k can switch between the assets inside the 401k without paying any tax. And that makes switching some of your retirement savings into crypto way more easy. So with that in mind, and with so many people having access to crypto, the big question is, how much will you need to retire? And then, well, how are we actually going to get you there? That's what we're doing in this video. We're building the ultimate Bitcoin retirement plan. And let me tell you, retiring on Bitcoin is much easier than you think. It literally comes down to investing a tiny number every single week. It's a number that I guarantee you, no matter who you are, you can afford to do this. So let's start off with exactly how much you need. In investing, there's a rule called the 25x rule that basically says that in order to retire, you need to put aside 25 times your annual salary and to have it invested at the time you retire. What it assumes is that you'll retire at 65 years old and that all your money will be invested. It also assumes that you'll live for about 30 years after you retire. But listen, we don't want to retire at 65. We want to be able to retire a lot sooner. And with all the amazing technology out there, I'm going to assume that we're going to live a lot longer than the 25x rule assumed. So I created a framework based on the 25x rule, but I modified it for our community. It's called the "We Ain't Leaving" rule.
I'm not fucking leaving!
And it assumes that we'll be like Brian Johnson and we'll live till at least 100 years old.
Right now is the very first time in human history where you can say with a straight face, you may not die.
You believe that?
Oh, there's no question.
It also assumes another thing. We ain't working until 65. We want to enjoy our lives, we want to enjoy our health, and we want to work for fun, not because we have to work. And so that brings me to the first part of our model, the part where we input our current age, our retirement age, and then the number of years that we're going to be in retirement. Let's assume that you're 30 years old today, and that we're going to retire early at 60 years old. And then let's assume that you're going to live to 100 years old. That's another 40 years. It means that you have 30 years to build your retirement, and then you'll need to live off that retirement for 40 years. Next, we need to work out how much you'll need to live on, but in today's terms. So let's assume that today you need $60,000 a year to live. But remember, because of money printing, inflation, currency debasing, what $60,000 buys you today isn't the same as what $60,000 will buy you in 30 years. You'll need a lot more than that $60,000. I mean, just look at this house and how it keeps getting more expensive in dollars every single year. Well, technically it's not getting more expensive. Technically, it's the currency that's devaluing. And you can see that when you compare that same house to gold or Bitcoin or any other scarce asset. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to assume an inflation rate for US dollars. And I say US dollars because, every currency model is different. And what I suggest you do is that you work it out in the world's reserve currency today, which is, of course, the dollar. Now, the Fed have told us countless times, they want inflation at 2%.
We will continue to aim for inflation of 2% while sustaining the economic expansion and a strong labor market.
But what we also know is that the Fed don't always meet their inflation targets. And there are periods in history where inflation runs rampant. If we look at the last 30 years, the average inflation rate in the US has been about 2.54%. And so, for the purpose of our model and to make sure we don't get caught off guard, I'm going to assume an inflation rate of 3%. So now we know that you'll need about $145,000 for every year that you're in retirement in about 30 years' time. And we must remember another thing, that inflation doesn't stop on the day we retire. In fact, when we're retired, our money actually keeps eroding. So to beat this inflation or erosion, we're going to need to keep our money invested in assets that outperform inflation. And that's where the concept of scarce asset kicks in. Let's look at gold. Over the last 20 years, gold outperformed inflation by 5.5%. Over the last 15 years, Bitcoin outperformed inflation by millions of percent. It probably won't carry on doing that forever, but we need to make some assumptions. So we're going to assume that for the first 10 years, Bitcoin will outperform inflation by 15%. And then for the next 10 years, by 10%. And then it's going to keep going down as it matures until eventually it goes down to where gold is right now and goes to about 6% performance. I know it's a super conservative assumption, but it's safe. And when you're planning for retirement, then rather safe than sorry. So I'm going to use these conservative assumptions. All right, let's walk this through step by step. You don't need spreadsheets. You don't need an economist. You don't need an advisor, because I've done everything for you. And I'm going to leave a copy of the spreadsheet with the model, the one that you're looking at now, in the description, so that you can tailor it to your personal retirement plan. All you need to do is answer 3 simple questions. When do you want to retire? Let's assume that you're 30 years old today and that you want to retire early, say at 60. That gives you 30 years to save up for your retirement. Next question is, how many years you're going to want to live in retirement? Now here, we're going to assume that you live to 100 because, like we said, you're Brian Johnson. That means that the money that you build up in the next 30 years must last you for 40 years. Lastly, what are your annual expenses today? Let's assume that in today's terms, you'll need $60,000 a year to retire and live comfortably. You can adjust these based on your own personal living expenses, but I'm going to use $60,000. That's it, 3 numbers. And this magic calculator that took us months to build is going to work out the rest. Now here's what it tells you. By the time you retire, $60,000 today will feel more like $145,000. And that's because of inflation. And that number will keep growing by 3% even when you're retired for 40 years. So the total number that you're going to need on the day that you retire is $2.2 million. Yeah, you heard me right. $2.2 million to retire. Take a second. Breathe. I don't know, maybe even grab a chair, because I know some of you just fell on the floor. If you are one of the people that didn't fall off the floor, just give me a sign of life by just maybe smashing a like or leaving a comment. I know at face value, that number sounds absolutely ridiculous. And that's the problem. Because when most people see this number, they get demotivated. And that means that they give up before they even start. Or worse yet, what they do is they start delaying their retirement. And then by the time they actually start saving for their retirement, they've lost a whole lot of years, and that's a huge mistake. So don't switch off yet, because there are a few tricks. Here's the first trick. That number, that $2.2 million, is in future inflated money. It's not like you need to walk into the bank today and pull out $2.2 million. That's $2.2 million in 30 years. And here's where it gets funny. If I told you you need to save $2.2 million, you'd laugh at me, right? But what if I said to you, all you need to do is save $92 a week? Suddenly that doesn't sound so impossible, right? Think about it. I mean, you've probably blown more this week at a nightclub. This is the whole point. Big scary number up top, small manageable number down below. And I want you to feel that. Because the first reaction is always, there's no way I can do that. And because of that, people don't even try. They give up before they've even broken it down. But then you see the weekly number and you go, well, hold on, that's one night out. That's just a few coffees. That's doable. Now here's the second trick. If you invest in assets that consistently beat inflation, that shortcuts the amount that you actually need to invest exponentially. Let me show you what I mean. If Bitcoin grows by just 18% for the first 10 years, and remember, that's not a crazy number. That's inflation plus 15%. And then in the next 10 years, it grows by 13%. And then in the next 10 years, 11%. One Bitcoin could be worth $5.5 million in 30 years. But let's look at the milestones, because that sounds like a big number. It means that in 10 years, Bitcoin will be worth $575,000. That's easy, right? I mean, it'll probably be way higher. And then I've reduced the Bitcoin overperformance aggressively just to be conservative. And keep in mind that Bitcoin is scarce and adoption is still happening, and we've just hit mainstream adoption. So I know these growth rates might actually be too low, but once again, I want to be conservative because it's your retirement we're talking about. I mean, under these assumptions, we're assuming that in 10 years, Bitcoin's going to be $575,000. But let's stick with it. And you know what? If we're wrong and Bitcoin outperforms, then you'll have a better retirement. You can retire on a yacht. And you can have these crazy, huge retirement parties. But invite me if you do, please. At that growth rate, instead of needing 20 Bitcoin to retire, as you would need today, the model shows that you're actually only going to need about 0.4 Bitcoin. That's it. You need to accumulate 0.4 Bitcoin in 30 years if you want to retire in Bitcoin. 0.4 Bitcoin in 30 years. That sounds easy, eh? So my job, actually, is to make sure that you can accumulate 0.4 Bitcoin in 30 years. And listen, if you can't do that between this channel and my other channel, then you got no chance. And here's the part that makes it real, makes it easier to get there. If you look at the sheet that I created, it shows that in order to accumulate 0.4 Bitcoin, which will be worth $2.2 million in 30 years, all you need to do is to consistently put away $92 a week. That's it. That's the number. $92 a week. Because if we assume that you invest $92 a week in Bitcoin starting today, and that you do it consistently for the next 30 years, every single week, you'll be able to live off that for over 40 years. And that's being conservative. You'll end up investing a total of $143,000. And with the conservative model that we built, that $143,000 will be worth $2.2 million. Now tell me, do you believe that you can put away $92 a week in order to retire? Exactly. So instead of scratching off your retirement plans, you now have something simple and actionable. Literally, one weekly target, $92 a week. And the best part is that you can use my model and plug in your own numbers. Maybe you want to spend more. Maybe you want to have a bigger retirement. Maybe you want to retire earlier. Maybe you want to live to 120. The calculator will figure it all out for you, and I've left the link for you guys in the description. It took me 5 months to build this calculator. All of a sudden, what used to feel impossible feels super doable by just following a simple plan. Pretty much anyone can retire on Bitcoin if they follow the simple plan. And if you invest more, well, look what happens to your retirement. Okay. Now for the best part. The plan assumes that you buy Bitcoin weekly, or what you do is you dollar cost average. It means that you'll buy the same amount every week, and the truth is that that's what most successful investors do. The good news though is that I found a way to dollar cost average smartly. And believe it or not, if you apply my unique dollar cost average strategy, you can retire in literally half the time. Yeah, half the time. It's not a framework that I've shared before, and when you see it, I guarantee you it's going to blow your mind. If you want to watch that video, it's coming out early next week. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because if you miss that video, you may be adding 15 years of hard work to your retirement. I'll see you guys again on the weekend. Until then, trade well, my friends.